It may or may not surprise you, but kayak fishing is obviously becoming extremely popular. You're seeing us pop up at your local lakes, your favorite hot spots, your favorite honey holes, rivers, and sharing the launch with all the boaters, pleasure boaters, fishermen. And it's especially drawn the attention of very popular professional bass anglers such as Mike Iaconelli, Brian Latimer, and Jordan Lee, just to name a few that are into the sport of kayak fishing. Now, kayak fishing isn't something new. Kayak fishing has been around since the beginning of time, but year in and year out, the popularity of it grows more and more. Now, the question we got to ask ourselves is why? Why is kayak fishing becoming even more extremely popular year after year? Well, I've got a list of things that I believe are the reason why, and I'm going to share them with you right now. Number one is going to be affordability. Now, what I mean by affordability isn't the cost comparison of a fully rigged out kayak versus a john boat. Okay, the affordability goes much deeper than that. And I've seen the comments, I've read the comments, I've responded to the comments hundreds of times. Why don't you just buy a bass boat, bro? And there's more to it than just that. Some of you watching may or may not know that I've owned a plethora of boats over the last decade, from salmon fishing boats to walleye fishing boats to pontoons to jet boats. You name it, if it's got a motor and floats, I have owned it. Fish. Oh, damn. There's a lot of things that go into the affordability aspect when comparing a fishing kayak to a fishing boat. You have gas, oil, maintenance, mechanic fees, parts. You know, the affordability of it really is a never-ending list. But when the affordability aspect comes in play with a fishing kayak, you pretty much draw a line in the sand wherever you choose to draw that line. You don't need a lot of things to get out and fish on a kayak. You don't need a pedal drive. You don't need a motor. You could simply go out in a sit-in style like I started with, or a sit-on-top style with a paddle, get out on the lake and start bass fishing. I personally, now this is my personal opinion, I personally would rather spend, and just for sake of conversation, let's say $6,000. I would rather take $6,000, buy a brand new kayak, rig it out with an electric motor, rig it out with Garmin electronics and live scope, as opposed to spending, let's say, $6,000 on a used boat on Marketplace and not even sure what you're getting. Number one, it could be somebody else's problem, and number two, constantly worrying every time you launch the boat to make sure everything's going to run perfectly and you're not going to have an issue when you're out on the water. That's one thing you never have to worry about when you're in a fishing kayak. Number two we're going to talk about is simplicity. Now, by simplicity, I mean exactly that. When it comes to a fishing kayak, you can do exactly like what I did and I'm doing right now. I took my feel-free lure, threw it in the back of my truck, grabbed two rods. I got my spinning rod for my wacky rig. I got a frog rod right here. Strapped it all down in my truck, went to the lake. From leaving my house to getting to the lake was extremely simple, and made it really enjoyable experience just from leaving my house to getting to the lake. Now, when it comes to a boat, there's a lot more that goes into it. From the second you latch that boat to your truck, you got to check the trailer lights, double check the tires on the trailer, make sure they got good inflation, make sure your axles are good. Are you legal? Do you need to stop at the gas station and get gas? Do I got oil to mix the gas? Are you in a two-stroke? You get to the launch, okay, I launched a boat, did I put the plug in? Really, the amount of the list of stuff that goes on, the checklist of just launching a boat as opposed to launching a kayak, the simplicity of the two are like comparing night and day. And number three I want to talk about is storage. Now, this is a big one, guys. When it comes to a fishing kayak, a lot of you watching, I'm assuming, have a garage, and even if it's a one-car garage, you have the ability to store this thing, whether it be on the wall with some hooks, whether it be up on the ceiling with some cradles and some ropes and tackle to get it lifted up on the ceiling. To be able to store this kayak indoors when it's not in use, even if you have the smallest garage out there, there's options to keeping this baby safe and secure inside and out of the weather when it's not in use. Now, when it comes to a boat, you know, it's a whole different ball game. If you don't have a garage to store it, and if you're like me, you're married and you have a wife, your wife likes to park in the garage. So if I had a boat, there's no way I'm storing my boat and a car in the garage together. So if you have to store it outdoors and covered, now you're opening yourself up to things like larceny, vandalism. I'm not saying I live in a bad neighborhood, but anywhere you go, if you leave expensive things outside for people to potentially damage or steal from, you're leaving yourself open to that. And number 4 I want to talk about is, in a kayak, we are forced to micromanage a lake. Now, to better explain what I mean about that is, so when I owned a fishing boat, I found myself more times than not wanting to be in 20 different spots at once, right? Now, how counterproductive is that? I mean, how many of you guys watching right now have owned a boat or currently own a boat and can put yourself in that situation? I know I can. Every time I had the boat on the water, I wasn't focused on the spot. I mean, I was, but not 100% focused on the spot I was fishing. In the back of my mind, I was always constantly thinking about that next spot. Should I burn over there? Should I go over here? Should I go over there? We're gonna check this spot next. You know, things like that. Where in a fishing kayak, you're forced to micromanage the lake as a whole, which will take time, but each spot you go to, you're able to completely pick that spot apart. So for me, I don't see the point of leaving fish to go find more fish. Now, if I had all day, sure, I would probably bounce around and try some different spots. But I'm gonna pick this one apart, and I'm gonna start throwing some top water in over them lilies and see if we can't get a big bite coming out of them lily pads. But that was my number 1 default to owning a boat was, you know, I never really had my mind in the game on the spot I was fishing. And I'm forced to do that in a fishing kayak. And honestly, I'm learning these lakes better by fishing from a kayak as opposed to fishing from a boat. I'm spending more time at the spots. And number 5 is gonna be fishing tournaments. Why I feel like kayak fishing is really taking over the bass fishing industry is tournament fishing. Now, kayak fishing is paving the way for fishing tournaments, for protecting the species and the waters. Really comparable to the MLF, where it's catch, weigh, release. Kayak fishing tournaments are based off of a catch, photo, release. And when it comes to that style of fishing, the fish receive the least amount of stress. The lake receives the least amount of stress. And really, in my opinion, the MLF does it right. Oh boy. I really don't like how, well, that's a big rocky. I really don't like the, you know, the weigh-in at the end of the day, because it puts so much stress on the fish. Nice rocky. It puts so much stress on the fish at the end of the day, and kayak anglers are really doing it right with the catch, photo, release method, and that's the standard across kayak fishing. That's the only way tournaments are done, and it's my opinion that kayak fishing tournaments throughout the season as a whole will do less damage than one catch and weigh-in style bass fishing tournament throughout the whole season. Kayak anglers will do less damage to the species and the lake itself compared to just one. Let's say there's 20 boats in it. Everybody catches the limit. That's 100 bass that are pulled out of that lake, driven around all day, trying to find, you know, let's call some fish. We got to call some weight. That is extremely stressful on the fish. And as anglers, we have to take care of our resources. We got to have that resource to continue to fish as we grow older and maintain that resource for the younger generation. Number 6 is going to be fishing places boats just can't go. Now, I don't mean this as, you know, your skinny water, your shallow little, you know, cuts off a lake, your rivers, canals, things like that. It goes deeper than that. For instance, the lake I'm on right now. This is a non-all sports lake. So what does non-all sports mean? It means if you have a boat and a gas motor, you are not welcome on this lake. And I live in Southeast Michigan. I am surrounded by lakes like this. You know, other than guys like myself that are on a kayak, or maybe guys fishing from the bank, but you can only cover so much of the lake from the bank. So lakes like this are truly, although this is not a private lake, this is a public accessible lake, but fisheries like this are truly an untapped resource, and to me are almost like living a bass fisherman's dream, because a lot of these fish are receiving little to no pressure from bass fishermen. Now, number 7, what I want to talk about is, and this is opinionated, but I feel like for me it stands true, is that kayak fishing will make you a better angler. So why is that? Why do I feel like kayak fishing has made me a better angler and can make you a better angler as well? And that is because it forces me to be more patient. It forces me to be more persistent in certain areas and really learning the lake, really learning the gear I'm using and how to use it. Because again, you're forced to an area to fish, and you're more productive by sticking to an area and sticking it out opposed to burning across the lake and trying all these different spots. It forces you to try different things, as far as, because we all buy it. We all buy a ridiculous amount of fishing gear, right? So it forces you to try a lot of that fishing gear, try different lures, try different things, because it's more times than not that there is catchable fish across the lake from one end to the other. It's just a matter of finding them, spending the time, and figuring out how to catch them. There's not this myth where there's just uncatchable fish. And I'm finding that more and more with the kayak, that the more time I spend in a spot, the more time I can micromanage that spot and really try different things, different tactics, different techniques to get these fish to bite. Because these patches of lily pads, I know there's a bass hanging out under there. So what I'm doing right now is I'm basically circling it and hitting it from every different angle. I'm trying different speeds. I'm trying different techniques. I'm trying to trigger these fish to bite. I know there's a fish under there. Matter of fact, I see one right now looking at my frog. You can do really productive fishing days just by hammering out one spot and just grinding it out. And more times than not, you're gonna figure it out, and you're gonna end up with a pretty good limit of fish at the end of the day. It's just, it allows you to be patient and persistent, and you got to keep that in your head. You have to remember that you're always gonna drive over more fish than you'll ever catch. So you need to just grind that spot out and figure out what the fish want and go ahead and catch them. It's that simple. And number 8, now don't get me wrong, number 8 is kayak fishing makes fishing 100% stress-free. What I'm saying is there is less stress involved getting to the water, getting on the water, and fishing with a fishing kayak as opposed to a fishing boat. Now don't get me wrong, I have had, on my fishing boat and buddies' fishing boats, I have had some absolutely riots. I'm not saying fishing from a fishing boat isn't fun. All I'm saying is there's stresses that are involved in it, and fishing should be 100% stress-free. You should not be stressed out about anything. And I've found with the fishing kayak, there's zero stress. There's literally zero stress. And what's really cool about kayak fishing is even if you want to go by yourself, you have the ability to do that. And fishing solo with a fishing kayak is way less stressful than dealing with a fishing boat, going out fishing by yourself. And if you want to go with buddies and you have kayak angler buddies, you all can go out on the lake, do your own thing. You can rig your kayak up exactly how you want to rig it up and fish from it, and your buddies can do the same thing. And you can share, you know, little DIY things that you've done to your kayak. You can share with each other all the different modifications you've done. You can share, you know, all the little doodads and trinkets that you've added to your kayak to make the experience, whether it's safer, more enjoyable, whatever it is. And hey, speaking of DIY, I am going to be creating for you guys the ultimate kayak fishing crate. Now what I've done is I've been watching a lot of the videos out there. There's a plethora of them, of DIY kayak crates. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the best of each one of those videos, put my own little twist on it, and create for you guys the ultimate kayak fishing crate that will put the black packs to shame. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel and make sure you hit that little bell notification to all. That way you're notified when that video uploads and any future content from me. Thanks a lot for watching, you guys. We'll see you on the next one.